What just happened between Brazil and the United States could change how emerging powers deal with Washington forever. Brazil's President Lula da Silva didn't just send a message to Donald Trump, he sent a shot across the bow of the entire U.S. foreign policy establishment. His words were simple but sharp. We're open to talks, but only as equals. And that phrase might just define a new era in U.S.-Latin America relations. Because what happened last month wasn't just another spat between nations, it was an attempted power play, one that reveals the desperation behind the mask of American diplomacy. But to understand why Lula's response is being called historic, we need to rewind. Let's go back to July. Right after the BRICS Plus summit in Rio de Janeiro, a summit that deeply rattled Washington, Donald Trump, who's campaigning hard on foreign policy toughness, suddenly dragged Brazil into his global trade war. Out of nowhere, Trump threatened to slap a 50% tariff on Brazilian exports. Why? Not because of trade imbalances, not because of economic disputes, but because Brazil's Supreme Court refused to drop charges against former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is currently on trial for allegedly attempting a coup d'etat after losing the 2022 election. Yes, you heard that correctly. The former president of the United States tried to pressure another country's judiciary through tariffs to protect an accused political ally. This wasn't diplomacy, it was economic blackmail. Even more shocking, the Brazilian Supreme Court justice presiding over Bolsonaro's case, Justice Alexandra de Moraes, was personally sanctioned by the Trump administration. A U.S. sanction on a foreign judge. Why? For prosecuting someone accused of subverting democracy, and then Trump had the audacity to suggest Lula should just call him to work it out. As if this entire crisis could be solved over a quick phone call. But Lula's response wasn't groveling. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. We're open to dialogue, but only on equal terms. We will defend our workers. We will protect our companies. If the United States wants to talk, our proposals are already on the table. In other words, this isn't a one-way street. Brazil is not your junior partner anymore. And that's what makes this moment so pivotal. Because Lula isn't slamming the door on diplomacy, he's redefining it. Brazil's finance minister, Fernando Haddad, has already confirmed that talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are underway. The channels are open, but they won't come at any cost. And that is the new normal. Because for decades, the U.S.-Brazil relationship has been deeply unbalanced. Washington gave orders, Brasilia complied, or paid the price. That script is now being torn up. Lula is drawing a bold line between diplomacy and coercion, between partnership and punishment. And here's the thing. Bullying backfires. Especially when it's aimed at a country like Brazil, a regional powerhouse, a top global food and energy exporter, and a growing player in international finance and diplomacy. Lula's leverage is this. Brazil has leverage, and it's ready to use it. He said plainly, it is unacceptable to try to use a political issue to impose economic sanctions on us. And let's be clear, he's 100% right. This isn't just about Brazil, because if the US president can try to twist the arm of a foreign judiciary with tariffs, what's next? This is about power, how it's used, and how it's being challenged, and at the center of this challenge is BRICS. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know BRICS isn't just some abstract economic club. It's a growing bloc of emerging powers, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and increasingly more through BRICS Plus. And these nations aren't rejecting relations with the West, they're rejecting subordination to the West. Trump and his allies know this, and they hate it, especially the idea Lula has been championing, reducing dependency on the US dollar in international trade. No, BRICS hasn't launched a new global currency, not yet. But the idea of de-dollarization is enough to trigger alarm bells in Washington. Because the dollar isn't just money, it's influence, control, and losing that symbolic monopoly terrifies the American establishment. Lula understands that, and he's pushing back anyway. He's made it crystal clear. Brazil is no longer economically dependent on the United States. It has massive trade with China, strengthening ties with the EU, growing investments from across Asia and Africa. It's leading environmental talks, tech partnerships, and playing peace broker roles in global conflicts. Brazil is no longer the junior partner it once was, and Lula is acting like it. But this isn't just an international drama, there's a domestic backdrop as well. As Lula stands firm abroad, Bolsonaro's supporters are back in the streets at home, protesting in major cities like Rio and Brasilia, claiming that Lula's government and the judiciary are persecuting their leader. It's not a coincidence. Trump's tariff threat wasn't just about trade, it was a signal of solidarity, a wink to Bolsonaro's base. A clear message, we've got your back, which makes this even more dangerous. Because when foreign policy starts aligning with internal political factions, across borders, it erodes the entire foundation of international law and mutual respect. But Lula isn't blinking. He knows what's at stake. He knows this is about more than Brazil. It's about the right of nations to chart their own course without economic gunpoint diplomacy. And that's the lesson for the rest of the global south, because today it's Brazil, tomorrow it could be South Africa, or Indonesia, or Turkey, or any country that dares to break from Washington's script. This is about redefining the global rulebook, one that doesn't punish independence, but respects it. So here's where we are. Trump is trying to coerce Brazil's judicial system. Lula is refusing to be bullied, BRICS is gaining momentum, and the world is watching. This isn't just about one trade dispute, it's about the future of diplomacy in a multipolar world. Will the US adapt and learn to negotiate as a peer, not a master? Or will it double down on sanctions, threats, and outdated imperial habits? Because make no mistake, Lula's resistance isn't just national pride, it's strategic defiance. If he succeeds, he won't just be defending Brazil's sovereignty, he'll be helping set a new global standard. One where countries don't have to choose between economic prosperity and political independence. One where power is shared, not imposed. One where leaders like Lula can say to Washington, "We'll talk, but only as equals." If you found this breakdown helpful or eye-opening, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. Do you think the US is ready for a world where it's no longer calling all the shots? What does Lula's stance mean for your country? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay curious, and take care.